Mrs. Mahanta, the Mahanta family, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted and honored to have been invited to deliver the third, I shall say, Sarat, Mahanta Memorial Lecture. Let me also express my gratitude that the entire Mahanta family has extended to me and my wife, who is also with me on this visit, for their wonderful, wonderful hospitality. Despite what has been said, it's not very obvious to me what qualifies me to deliver this particular talk. I'm of course familiar with Professor Mahanta's work. I have read his columns in the Assam Tribune. I'm also familiar with what he has done in the Human Rights Commission. But our paths never crossed. I never had the good fortune of ever meeting him. Nor have I personally done much in what he is remembered for, Assam's history and work on human rights. My sole claim to delivering this talk, and even speaking on this particular topic, is, as was mentioned, I was born in this part of the world, in Shillong, and spent the first 10 years of my life there. Therefore, I had associations tinged with nostalgia, memories of this entire region. For most people in this region, for several people who are here, and certainly for the parents and grandparents of many who are here, lives were disrupted in 1947. My family's lives were also disrupted, dislocated. I'm not talking purely about the human tragedy of what happened in 47. I'm also referring to the legacy of what that left. A legacy that we are still trying to repair and control the damage. The Northeast primarily has 7 states. There is Sikkim also, but Sikkim is somewhat different. Many people in what is called mainstream India may be very surprised to learn that in the 1930s, this particular region was one of the more prosperous parts of the country. It was one of the most prosperous parts of the country because its economic and commercial linkages were with the neighboring countries, primarily Bangladesh and Myanmar. Economic and commercial laws, the laws of economic development and prosperity, do not follow administrative boundaries. They have their own natural flows, they have their own natural natural networks, when those are disrupted because of what Sir Radcliffe did at the stroke of a brush, or because what had happened before Radcliffe, lives get disrupted. I mentioned 1947, but it is not only about 1947. The Union government's intervention in roads, railways, civil aviation, even electricity. It is somewhat tragic that we had to wait for more than 6.5 decades after independence for every state in the northeastern region to have a railway line and to have an airport. By roughly the year 2020, sometimes it's 2019, sometimes it's 2021, but roughly by 2020, every state in the northeastern region will have railway connectivity, civil aviation connectivity. Waterways is a bit of a problem because there are issues that have to be sorted out there in terms of dredging and stuff like that. But let me quickly flag two issues. The first issue I want to flag is the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission, which have led to a huge amount of untied devolution of funds to the state governments. And the way I see it, in terms of the 7th schedule of the Constitution, is that untied money is now available to state governments to ensure the maintenance of the transport assets that are created, to build the feeder roads, which may be district roads, and to ensure investments in health and education. If governments have ensured law and order, roads, water and electricity, and health and education, I think governments have ensured everything that they need to ensure. Development will automatically happen. You will no longer need special subsidies for investments and transportation in the Northeast. I should also quickly mention the centrally sponsored schemes which have not been determined by the union government but have been determined by subgroups of chief ministers. Let me now move on to something else. But before I move on to something else, let me flag 2 or 3 issues. I do not want to take positions on these issues because these are issues that citizens of the states have to decide. It is not something for Delhi to decide. It is not something for the union government to decide. It is not something for NITI Ayog to decide. It is for the citizens of the states to decide. And therefore state governments to decide. I believe these are extremely important issues, which is why I am posing them as rhetorical questions. If a region is legally treated as an enclave, it will permanently remain an enclave. It will never become mainstream. I am referring, of course, to Article 371 of the Constitution, which ensures that some regions of the Northeast remain permanent holidays. Several of us have been to Goa. We will continue to go to Goa. Goa is a prosperous state. Imagine and ask yourselves whether Goa would have been prosperous in 1961 had something like Article 371 carved out Goa as a special enclave. So my proposition before you is Article 371 ensures that for some parts of the Northeast, the mainstreaming does not happen. The second one that I'm flagging, again as a rhetorical question, so please do not misquote me, is the 5th and the 6th schedules to the Constitution. The 5th and the 6th schedules to the Constitution effectively negate things that are in other parts of the Constitution, like elected self-governance through Panchayati Raj institutions. They also lead to things like the autonomous district councils, which belong to an era when these did not exist as states. Now that we have these states, it is my view that the 5th and the 6th schedules only complicate governance, whatever be the definition of governance, because of these multiplicity of organs. The third issue I want to flag is after governments have done all of these things, you want the private sector to come in. But the private sector is going to come in and exploit what? It is largely going to exploit labor resources and land and natural resources. But the land markets are also fragmented, because the land laws in some parts of this region are completely different. The labor markets are also fragmented because labor inflows from other parts of India, I'm not talking about other countries, but from other parts of India are not quite welcome. It is somewhat paradoxical to expect that capital inflows will happen from other parts of India, but labor inflows will not happen. I'm just leaving these as rhetorical questions. Let me now re-quote something that you heard earlier. I'm going to re-quote it and pluck it out of context. This is a poem. It's a poem, it's an excerpt from a poem by a young poet from this region. This poem says, "They say I am insane, that I am looking for sunshine in the rain. I say I am only following my heart. My story has just begun. This is just the start." The reason I quoted this is because I think for the Northeast, my story has just begun. This is just the start. There was a generation, I guess, in a sense representative of that generation, which left the Northeast. We found our fame, fortune, subsistence, whatever be the word, elsewhere. human capital flight. Human capital flight may bring remittances. Human capital flight does not lead to wealth and prosperity within the region. For wealth and prosperity within the region, the young, the youth of the Northeast must find opportunities within the Northeast, must choose to remain within the Northeast, must choose to build their lives within the Northeast, and must ensure that the posterity, the future of the Northeast is a story that has just begun, but it is a story that will continue. In that, governments have a role to play, as I mentioned, but the primary role will have to be performed by private sector, private entrepreneurship, private initiative, private capital, because that is what will ensure that that recrafting of development happens, so that the Northeast is no longer as marginalized and bypassed as has been the case, and the young people who are here have a vested interest in that prosperity, so that this region, from the Barak and Brahmaputra valleys to the lush green of Arunachal Pradesh, down to Mizoram and Meghalaya, and eastwards from Tripura to Manipur and Nagaland, becomes a region that begins to attract both migrant labor and capital, because it becomes one of the more prosperous parts of the country as it used to be in the 1930s. And I think we are just about beginning to see that process happen. Thank you once again for having invited me.